I'm Ada. The presentation topics I bring to you today are change and renew. In this regard, a historical event I choose was the famous reform and opening up in China. First of all, I will discuss with you my understanding of change and renew. As you can see, I list some key words. So, I think change is to remove the unreasonable part of a thing and make it more perfect. But from the historical point of view, I think the change may be to break the shackles of thought, to innovate the inherent system or an idea, and then to improve the social or individual welfare level and make progress. However, when breaking the original system, it is often difficult to be accepted or recognized or even more questioned and hated. In terms of renew, I think that simply speaking, renew is to restore or update one thing and make it alive again, or a thing has been prosperous but it has declined for some reason, and then it has flourished again because of someone or some system. Now I will start my topic of economic reform and open up of China. And first, I would like to introduce this picture. It's a picture of the city in China. It's Shenzhen. It's a city near the sea, and it's largely related to this renewal in my topic. Reform and opening up have three main backgrounds. First, from the perspective of political, the 10-year civil strife of the Cultural Revolution has caused serious setbacks and losses to the party and our whole country and people. The second is the perspective from economic, and the third is the Great Meeting. So let's have a look at the perspectives from economic. So before the reform, China's economic system was dominated by the state ownership and central planning. From 1950 to 1973, China's real GDP per capita grew at an average annual rate of 2.9%, which put it in the middle of Asia countries during the same period. But the people were still poor, and the new technological revolution that started in the world in the 1970s pushed the world economic forward at a faster rate. The gap between China's economy, scientific and the technological strength and the international advance level has clearly widened, and it is facing huge international competition pressure. And after the Cultural Revolution, the Chinese Communist Party appeared crisis in power and trust. So now let's move to the great turning point in reform and opening up. The third plenary meeting of the 11th Central Committee of the Communist Party of China was held in Beijing on December 11, 1978. The central topic of the plenary meeting is to discuss the shift of the focus of the work of the entire party to the construction of socialist modernization. And this meeting marked the beginning of the reform and opening up policy, and was also a decisive turning point in Chinese history. It also marked the beginning of Chairman Mao's Cultural Revolution policy, being vetoed in comprehensive manner and put China on the road to comprehensive economic reform. The historical task of this meeting is to build China into a great modern socialist country. And since then, the Chinese people have entered a new period of reform, opening up, and socialist modernization. As we can see, this picture was a primary source I found, and it was taken by the time during this meeting. Of course, this meeting also achieved considerable results. There were four main points. First, the collective leadership with Deng Xiaoping at the core found the most important route to correct the chaos at that time. Second, this meeting completely rejected the unconditionally obeyed policy and re-established the ideological line of emancipating the mind and seeking truth from facts. The unconditional obey here refers to whatever Chairman Mao said is correct, and all Chairman Mao's knowledge must be observed. And the third is to stop using slogan class struggle and shift the focus of the country's work to economic construction. The class struggle here was also an idea that occurred during the Cultural Revolution. This idea was full of controversy and had a certain negative impact on China at that time. The fourth meeting actually formed the leading collective of the party's central committee with Deng Xiaoping. So now let's look at the main actions in reform and opening up, which can be divided into internal and external. And the internal action in this reform is like a change, and the external is to open into outside world. It's renew here. Why? It's because in the past, China was like open to every country in this world. But after Qing and Ming dynasty, we closed our country for a long time. So the Qing dynasty declined. But now we did a great renew during this reform. So let's have a look at the internal first. The internal is rural reform. In November 1978, a small port village in China implemented a household-to-product contract responsibility system. Of farmers are divided into households and they bear their own profit and losses. This means that farmers enjoy the rights to operate and manage the land, but the ownership is still owned by the state. According to the contracts of rights, responsibilities and benefits signed by the two parties, the farmers themselves arrange the various production activities, and collectively paying for accumulation and other retentions are completely owned by the contractor. At the beginning of this reform, 18 farmers in Xiaogang village signed a life and death consent form, and contracted the land in village separately, created a precedent for the household contract responsibility system. At that time, the village had a good harvest. The life and death consent form is now in the National Museum of China. It represents an important beginning of China's reform and opening up. As you can see, this picture I found is the consent form. There are even fingerprints of every farmers on it. Now let me discuss the achievements of this change. And since then, China has begun to lift the curtain of domestic reforms. Also in cities, the management of state-owned enterprise has improved. It also liberated the productive forces and aroused the enthusiasm of the masses. At the same time, it also liberated parts of the rural labor force, began the transfer of rural labor force, and promoted the development of the country's urbanization. Now let's move to the next part. The external part is to opening to the outside world. So we have 4 topics in this. The first is what is opening to the outside world, and the second is the purpose, the third is the progress, and the last one is the pattern. So let's move to the first one. What is the opening to the outside world? This is actually to the active expansion of foreign economic exchanges, and it's also lead to relaxed policies, loosen or remove various restrictions, and stop protecting the domestic market and domestic investment place, and develop an open economy. And the purpose of it is to develop and continuously strengthen foreign economic and technological exchange, and also actively participate in international exchange and competitions to promote economic change and transform China's economic structure from a closed economy to an open economy. As I said before, in Qing Dynasty, we have closed our country for a long time, so our economy has been declined. And what we need to do in this reform is to promote the healthy and rapid development of the national economy. And now I will introduce the process. The process is actually specific to cities, and let me introduce which city we have opened. In 1979, the CPC Central Committee set up pilot special economic zones in Shenzhen, Zhuhai, Xiamen, and Shandong. And these cities are actually near the sea, and these cities, I can make sure they are very wealthy now, and everyone want to work there and live there. In April 1984, the CPC Central Committee and the State Council decided to further open 40 port cities, including Dalian, Tianjin, and Yantai. And this city is also near the sea, and we actually opened the port cities, and they are now take responsibility to the trading with other countries. In 1985, it has opened up an open economic zone in Yangtze River Delta, the Pearl River Delta, the Eastern Fujian, and the Bohai Sea. In 1988, the Hainan Special Economic Zone was created, making it the largest special economic zone in China. And the Hainan is also developed into a travel place, and all cities there sells different buildings to the people from different provinces. And in 1990, a decision was made to develop an open Pudong new area in Shanghai. And as we all know, Shanghai is very wealthy now, and the Pudong is build an airport now, and this airport is the largest airport in the east of China, and it take all foreign flights. And for our students, most of students now like to choose this airport because this airport is huge and very convenient. Now I will quickly explain the pattern of this opening. This opening is from coast to the interior, and its special economic zones, coastal open cities and coastal economic open areas is the interior. And it's an all-directional, multi-tried and wide-range pattern of opening up. I will do a conclusion of this presentation. And first, I would like to introduce the 3 things this reform brings to us today. They are basically 3 great turning points. The first great turning point is the transformation from highly concentrated planned economic system to a socialist market economic system for now vigor and vitality. And the second great turning point is the transition from a closed and semi-closed society to a fully open society. And the third great turning point is the social transformation of people's lives, from basic food and clothing to basic well-off. This is really true, and I often heard the stories from my grandparents. They always talk about things before 40 years, so it's actually have a big difference between now and 40 years ago. So All in all, without reform and opening up, it is impossible to achieve three great changes. And at the last, the 40 years of the reform and opening up have created a miracle of China's rapid economic development, and a large number of great theorists and practitioners have emerged. Therefore, looking back over the past 40 years, in addition to the fruitful results we have achieved, we should pay more attention to ups and downs in the reform process and the difficulties it faces, as well as the problems that still need to be resolved through further reforms. Change and renewal are not only remarkable in reform and opening up, but they also play an important role in the world history. That's all my presentation. Thank you for listening.